Welcome to another episode about presentation skills and specifically how to overcome those fears of public speaking in order to present. And we have a special guest, Sabine Kvenberg, who teaches people and gives them the confidence to communicate powerfully and be able to present. She's the host of the podcast Become, presentation skills expert, and helps people get over those public speaking jitters. She's the author of a new book called Become Empowered. Here's the interesting thing about Sabine. She has a previous career in performing arts, 27 years in performing arts. Performing arts is a very visible, you're out there, you're in front of a lot of people. Welcome, Sabine. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Ivna. I'm glad to be here and have this conversation with you and your audience.
Yeah, so that accent, Sabine, that's from Germany, isn't it?
It sure is. Yes, I was born and raised in Germany, and that's where I started my career. I was a stage and TV actress in Europe for 10 years before I came to the States and opened my performing arts school. But my whole family is still in Germany. So last year I visited and we went to this big carnival that is in Hamburg twice a year. And my niece said, "Oh, Sabine, let's go onto this new roller coaster ride." And I said, "Sure." I'm not very fond of roller coasters, but I wanted to be the cool aunt from the United States, right? So as soon as we sat in the cart and those bars came over my shoulders, I got this knot in my stomach and the fear kicked in. And then the cart started and I knew there's no going back anymore. And as we climbed up those hill right to the top, I was thinking the entire time, oh my God, what if we get stuck? What if we don't make it alive? What if? So we finally got to the top, and the only thing I could do is just hope for the best, close my eyes, and then the ride down began. And before I knew it, we were back at the beginning. And that reminded me so much on the fear of public speaking, because we know we have to do it, no matter if you have to do it in your business or even in your personal life. You might be the best man, you have to give a toast, or the bridesmaid, right? So we know we have to do it. And so we find ourselves going up on stage or going up in front of the crowd. And the entire time, what's happening is because we feel this knot in our stomach and we have this fear, and then thoughts of, what if I forget the lines? What if I mess up? What if my throat closes up? All these things. And then finally you make it. You might be in front of the people that you have to speak to, or even on stage. And then you start. And before you know it, it's over. And you don't even remember half of it. Like I did when I came down. I was there and I didn't remember half of it. This is what I put that comparison to, because I experienced it myself. And did you know that public speaking is the number one fear of people? Over 70% of fear of public speaking.
I've heard that it's the second biggest fear outside of death.
You know what? It comes even before death. And that totally blew my mind when I heard that. Because, yeah, being on the roller coaster, I could die if the car gets out of its rails. But the point is, why I'm sharing the story is the things that we are telling ourselves, what I call the communication with self. Yes, communication skills are very important and we have to communicate with others, but it all starts with our own self-communication, all the self-talk that we give ourselves. That's the first step, being aware of that. And then, of course, the next would be how we can combat that.
Sabine, what does that self-talk look like? What do you tell yourself in those situations? What do you tell yourself early on in your career when you were stepping on those stages for the first time, really scared of that stage?
It's a good question. And I want to go back to, yes, when I started performing, of course, you have what we call stage fright. And that is when you, for the first time, go on stage, for the first time, opening night, right? Once you've done it several times, you're fine. You don't have that stage fright any longer. But for the first time, you do. And part of your education is to do the right breathing that calms down your nerves. Of course, you have to breathe correctly and do the belly breathing also for projecting your voice, either as an actor that's just speaking voice or as a singer. But at the same time, when you know the deep breathing, that also helps you calm down your nerves, taking a deep breath in and out. Because when you're nervous, the first thing that happens is you have shallow breathing and faster breathing, and it's right up here, right? Now, and that happens automatically. It's just a response from your body. It's what we call that fight and flight response that happens. But with your conscious mind, you can slow down your breathing. Then it's an override of your subconscious mind that kicks in with that fight and flight response. And so when you use your conscious mind in the knowing, to take a deep breath, couple of deep breath, you will slow down your breathing. So that's the first step. And that's one of the techniques that I teach my clients. But then to your next question about the self-talk. And it's one of the things that when you go on stage, either as an actress or you have to present a presentation, a speech, a talk, or whatnot, you have to be aware that there is a difference between paralyzing fear and what I call the good butterflies that are in your belly. Because when we have those butterflies, the good butterflies, right? Not the not, that helps you be more alert, that helps you be concentrated. The energy comes up because it's a natural response. When you're in that stage, you have more energy, right? And so this is a good thing. So make friends with that and also notice the difference. And that is a good thing. And as soon as you step on the stage, it'll go away because then you are focused on your talk or your speech or your presentations. So those are the things. This is number 2. And number 3 is what I call the priming. And that's one of the things that I teach in my courses and presentations. I call my 3 Ps: prime, prepare, present. So the first is the prime, and that is how you prime yourself. Know the breathing, but then also the mindset, because that's where it all starts. And start flipping that negative self-talk, once you're aware of it, to the positive one. So that's the beginning.
I love those 3 tips. When it comes to the deep breathing, how long should we breathe for? And is there a specific count or speed? What's the best way to go about that? And when it comes to the priming the mindset, flipping the negative to the positive, what is an example of that? And what is a positive form of flipping that we can tell ourselves when we're stepping into that stage?
So to answer your first question, there is no right or wrong as far as the breathing goes, how long you should do it. Sometimes just a couple of deep breaths will already do the trick. You don't have to do it for a long time. So I would just recommend 3 deep breaths. Inhale through your nose. And when you do this, make sure your belly expands. And then just hold it for 2 or 3 seconds and then release. And when you exhale, have the feeling that all the tension you exhale at the same time. So you have that breathing, and at the same time, you let go. And that's also a mind way to let go of the tensions that we have. And just be aware. And that's, again, another step is be aware of your body. And oftentimes we have our shoulders up, and that is tension. Make sure your shoulders go down when you exhale. So that is question, or the answer to your question number 1. Number 2, mindset. And I love this question because oftentimes people ask me, oh, Sabine, are you never scared again, or you're seasoned and you never fear? The question is no, there are always new situations when you are in a situation for the first time. But here's the big difference. You have to be aware, first of all, so that you can flip the switch, right? That's number one. Number two, you have to come into the right state. And that's when I work with my clients. I teach them to change their state of being. That has so much to do with that. To give you an example, it has been a few years back, many years back, when I was the music minister for our church, for our local church. I was invited to go to a speaker and musician conference. And I just started writing my own music. As a performer, I was a musical theater performer. I had no worries whatsoever to sing a song in front of a large audience. At that conference, the second to the last day, we were invited to put our names into a hat for the chance, for drawing, for the chance to perform our original music. And I did this, but then I got so scared because that was the first time that I was presenting my original music, which is very personal. Oftentimes talks are very personal to an audience, about 100 other musicians. And I secretly wishing my name was not drawn. And guess what? My name was not drawn. And I was relieved, at the same time disappointed in myself. Now, the next night, there were two wonderful musicians who finished out the evening. And Greg Tamlin was one of the performers, and he sang the song called Heart of the Mother. We all knew it in the auditorium, and we sang along. And just singing that beautiful song with that beautiful melody, it just lifted our spirit. It lifted my spirit. I almost felt I was flying. I was in this very good state. And then out of the speakers, the MC announced, and we felt so bad that not everybody had the chance to perform last night. We want to give you another opportunity. Bam! And I was back in that mode. Oh my gosh, what if they don't like it? What if I'm not good enough? I've never studied musical composition. What if, right? And this is this negative self-talks that we have. However, this time it was different. I was in that very positive state. I was elevated. So I felt good. And I was able to switch that flip immediately after those thoughts of what if I'm not good enough came into my mind. I had that self-talk, Sabine, it's okay. It's okay. You gonna be good. And then I gave myself a little bit of like a little bit tough talk, said, Sabine, if you do not go onto the stage right now, you will never do it. And I said, I will. I'm gonna go there. And then there's one other thing that I did, and what I also teach my clients. I gave myself permission to fail. I said, just be yourself, be authentically. You practiced, you prepared, and it's all okay. So I went onto that stage, and later on, people told me, oh, you look like Maria from The Sound of Music with your skirt and your shirt and your blouse. So I had my guitar. So I shared with the audience from the heart how I got my guitar that I just started playing again. And I asked them all to join me in the chorus. And guess what happened? Magic started to happen. Everybody started singing along. It was beautiful. And afterwards, people were coming up to me and saying, thank you for sharing. Oh, this is what I needed to hear. Please keep singing. Please keep writing. Now, if I would have not been able to flip that switch, and if I would have not gotten up on stage, everything else that came afterwards, writing more songs, creating a CD, writing books, would have never happened. So I just encourage everyone, if you have something to share, if you feel you want to stay on purpose, do it. And if you need help, get help. There are enough experts or teachers or mentors out there that can help you in that process.
A lot of people can relate to your story, Sabine. And as you were sharing it, I was here thinking about the several moments where I secretly wished I was not going to be called for something, or and at the same time wanting to be, but not wanting. What really caught my attention from what you said was you gave yourself permission to fail. Sometimes I feel like when I do that with myself, I'm allowing myself to, in a way, not be the best version of myself. However, it allows me to take action and do things, and then it does help me become the best version of myself. But one of the things that came to mind from your story, and this was really early on, struggled with confidence. And when in my first year of college, it was a military school, and we had to run a couple kilometers. I'm not an athletic person at all, not great at running. And my goal was not to be last. As long as I'm not last in the group, I'm okay. And often I found myself taking the risk of doing something uncomfortable and telling myself, I just don't want to be last. As long as I can get through and I can finish it, that's good enough. That just helps us step into that next greater thing that's super scary, where we might not be the best, might not be the best in the class, we might not be the best performer, but we always have to start as someone who is not the best, who is maybe the worst, and do those reps in order to be the best. So I love what you said, giving yourself permission to fail.
And what you said is so true. You don't have to start by, I want to be number one. If I'm not getting there right away, I fail and I will never start again. No. And when you said, I just don't want to be last, that's the first step. We go in steps of becoming our next greater self, which is so interesting that you said that. As you mentioned at the beginning, I am in the process of publishing my next book, which is the third book, actually the fourth book, but the third book that I wrote. It's an anthology of stories that was actually born from my podcast Become. I had so many beautiful stories, and I have so many people with beautiful stories. I couldn't get them all onto my podcast. So I invited several people, and I ended up with 12 other women who shared their story of becoming their next self, or next greater self, or best self. And all stories are different, so different, but they have one thing in common. They started somewhere. And in some cases, it took years and years of either being in an abusive relationship or before they started seeing what their purpose is in life. But what all have in common is that process of becoming. And those stories are beautifully written. They're inspiring, and it's entertaining at the same time. Some of them are very entertaining, and some of them are very sad. It's totally a mix. You are caught up in these emotions, but all have one thing in common: is you see the transformation that everybody went through. And by reading or hearing the stories, like you said, just by hearing the story that I shared, you could relate to it in one form or another. And that can help you looking at it differently and stepping up and becoming. And so I can't wait for that book to get out there and get out into the world.
I love the philosophy of telling stories to educate, to inspire, to teach. And you brought in these stories of women. And your book is called Become Empowered: Echoes of Grace and Strength, Real Life Stories of Women's Transformation and Triumph. Is that right?
Yes, that's it.
12 stories. So I recently also published a book based on stories, because it's such an important thing. And I love that it seems like your stories are stories of transformation and becoming as a whole individual. So personally, as well as professionally.
Yes, it's personally and professionally. Some through that transformation found their purpose. And actually there are 13 stories. So 12 stories other women. The 13th one, or the first one, is mine, where I share the story of actually what I shared here. It's part of the story that I shared, and then the other 12 women. So 13 stories altogether.
Beautiful. And what's one of your favorite stories in the book?
There is no favorite story in that book. They're all equally important and equally beautiful, all in its own different way. But the most important part of that book is that people can see themselves in the stories. And it is more important than anything else, because it's a book of our times. Right now, there's so much uncertainty that's happening in the world, really. And it goes back to communication, really. We forgot to listen. We don't listen anymore. We're speaking over each other. We don't listen what somebody else has to say. We are so focused on just one thing and are not open anymore. So I think communication today is more important than ever.
Is there any other last thought that you want to leave with our audience today, Sabine?
One thing that I said at the very beginning is important, and that is the communication with yourself. Take time to communicate. And one way to do that is really to be still. And I like to close my eyes, because when your eyes are closed, what happens is you are not in that three-dimensional world anymore that is distractive. When you close your eyes, you can actually already create what you want to create in the future, which is another thing that I work with my clients. So that is the number one thing that I would recommend, is really communicate with yourself, creating the life that you want in a certain way. And then the last would be learn how to tell stories. And when you do that, as you mentioned, I'm a storyteller, as you probably could already hear in this interview. But people love to listen to stories. We are hardwired. That's in our DNA. We learn through stories. We are connected when somebody's telling a story. And when you combine all of these, you cannot be anything else but become a great communicator.
That's beautiful. So, quick recap of what you shared today. Here's my key takeaways. In order to overcome that fear of speaking, of public speaking in particular, breathe deeply, belly breathing with exhale, and being aware of our bodies. Self-talking is super important, and embrace the good butterflies because they're helping us concentrate and be alert. And then number 3 is priming. And you give a beautiful example of when you had to prime yourself and embrace that opportunity to showcase your song. So flip the negative into a positive instead of those negative, what if they don't like me, what if situation. And part of that is giving yourself permission to fail, which I love. That was incredible. And obviously the book and stories, which are something that really does capture people's attention. Your book is all about that. Sabine, where can people find you and get deeper into your teachings and what you have to share?
Very easy. Just go to my name, sab.com/resources. And there I have free downloads. If somebody wants to do maybe like videos, I have a video presentation template. And I also have a chance for you if you want to get onto my VIP guest list before the virtual book launch, there are a lot of things. You can get a signed copy. We have prizes that we draw, like a great microphone. For example, this microphone here, it will be in the drawing. Everybody needs a good microphone when you do your Zooms, right? So these are a lot of things. And if you just want to talk with me and learn more of how you can become a better speaker or communicator, you can always go to talktosabine.com.
I like that. Talktosabine.com.
Yeah, and schedule a time on my calendar.
When is your book coming out?
The release date is on April 24th. And I just ask everybody, if you want to support this book, to order it on that day, on the 24th. That will help us out quite a bit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sabine, for storytelling with us, sharing these wonderful tips to overcome the fear of public speaking and have positive self-talk.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here with you and having this conversation.